Hello everyone, welcome back to Morgan Hasn't Seen for the beginning of a new, most interesting looking series on Morgan
Yes.
Hasn't Seen, Jeannine. It has to be said, quite intriguing, quite eye-opening at first glance, I think, this series. We've called it Provocative Pictures, which I think is a great name that you came up with. It just works so well. I'm really pleased with the little poster I've
Yes,
done for
looks
this
great.
series.
Yeah.
I think we're all
Teamwork.
in teamwork. We're all in good spirits to start us off. And I think hopefully that will stay true, despite the ups and downs this series will take in tone and in
Yes.
attitude towards the central topic, of course, that holds all 5 movies that we'll be covering together of sex in all its various forms and
Yeah.
ways and thoughts and feelings and situations. And you know how I often like to refer to such things as situations rather than anything directly.
Yes.
I'm wondering if this series is actually going to force me to end up talking in some sort of direct way about these topics rather than being frighteningly beat around the bush about it like I am.
Well, I mean, that is what intrigued me about the idea for this series is how are we going to talk about this? Where are these discussions going to lead us? What are we going to end up focusing on in these films? Are we going to be really kind of talking about the plot points that deal with sex, or are we going to be talking about the performances and the characters and maybe seeing the themes relating to sex and something else? So,
Yeah.
and I think it's a really fun mix of films. There's some comedic films, there's some dramatic films, films that deal with addiction, um, films that deal with satire, um, emotional films, and films that kind of joke about sex. So,
Yeah.
uh, yes, I think it's going to be a really interesting mix, and I'm just very excited to see where these discussions will lead us. Also, just very funny that this series was predicated on us coming up with an appropriate title for it because it was
It
literally
really was.
if we couldn't find an appropriate title to describe the movies without being crude or getting flagged on social medias, then this series couldn't happen. So I'm glad I was able to come up with provocative pictures.
Yes, it's very good. We didn't want to call it sex movies because
Yes, because
that
that could
sounds,
mean
you know,
something else.
it really could. We're not here talking for 5 weeks on Morgan Hasn't Seen about the kind of movies that the characters in this movie we're talking about today are really, really obsessed over. We're
Yes,
not talking about those kind of movies,
yes.
even in their most famous form. We're talking about movies about sex, provocative pictures, as they will forever be known, starting this week with 2004's The Girl Next Door, which I
Yes.
think is a wonderful way to begin the series because it's just not too intense for a first try. Janine, let's get the innuendos out with
Yes.
straight away. For a first go at it, it's
Yeah.
easy, it's steady, it's familiar. You're not
Yeah.
being thrown into the horrendous world of some sort of leather-clad dungeon somewhere. No,
Yes.
you're nicely involved with reasonably simple things that are going on in just a slightly spicy way.
Yes, familiar elements, and then you kind of get into your typical, teen sex comedy aspects. But they also kind of handle it pretty subtly, so there's not, like, a ton of nudity, so you're really
No,
kind of using the
surprisingly.
themes of the sex industry, as opposed to really showing too much of it.
Yeah, it's odd, really. I mean, I don't know what I was expecting from something like The Girl Next Door. It seemed to me to be a movie about a high schooler where an ex-adult actress moves in next door and he becomes slightly over the top in love with her. and maybe the whole movie's just about them eventually getting together, like so many high school rom-coms
Yes.
are. But it's way more than that. It deals very directly with the porn industry, quite surprisingly.
Yes, it takes this really interesting turn. I remember the first time I saw this movie, this was a long time ago, obviously. This was like 2 years out of high school for me when this movie came
20
out.
years ago was
Yes.
the year this movie.
Yes. And me and my friend, her parents have a pest control business, and they would have a client who and her and me would clean the office on weekends, so that was like a little side job we would do. And so they had a client who would give them like these free movie tickets. So we would go see these preview screenings of movies all the time. And this happened to be one of those movies that we got tickets to a
Okay.
preview screening for. So I just remember, watching this movie thinking it was that kind of basic premise. This kid, headed for college, honor student kind of kid, meets this girl, falls for her right away, and then learns that she's a porn star. And then it's this whole kind of thing of him having to deal with it. So when it goes into this whole other aspect of the porn industry, and we bring in Timothy Olyphant's character, and it's this whole kind of
Yeah.
plan that they have to execute, and it turns into this whole other situation. I was kind of surprised. I was not expecting it to kind of have these levels to it. Which just made
No,
it
I
kind of
think
fun and kind of elevated it from your basic kind of teen sex comedy to have these different layers.
yeah, and you said it right there. There's not, we're not overdone with nudity in this movie. And okay, I think we will have a fairly significant amount of nudity throughout this series. I think it goes
Yeah.
kind of without saying. But even, comparing this to an American Pie that obviously was in its kind of heyday slightly before this
Yeah.
movie came out, but has so much more just direct nudity in it
Yeah.
and actual sex scenes and sex discussions, I
Yeah.
suppose, in it
Mhm.
than a movie that's actually about
Kind of the
getting
industry.
slightly involved in the porn industry was a
Yeah.
little bit odd to me. And maybe
Yeah.
that's because this movie takes itself way more seriously than the admittedly very, very stupid and very good, very enjoyable
Yeah.
American Pie does. But that wants to be one thing. It wants to be lurid, it wants to be in your face, and it wants to be
Yeah.
shocking. This doesn't. This wants to be a genuine high school rom-com, just with this added
Added
interest element.
layer. Yes. Yes. I totally see what you mean by that because, yeah, I think something like American Pie wants to be an Animal House or a Porky's,
Exactly. Yeah.
or
100%.
a Revenge of the Nerds. Whereas, this film, has those elements, but it's putting kind of the teen romance aspect first and front and center. And this kind of sex industry thing is kind of just the backdrop for that, which is kind of a unique thing for a movie like this.
It really is. I suppose you might be. Would you have been disappointed to learn that I am a fan of American Pie? I think this would have fit into the. Would this have fit into Provocative Pictures? Would that have fit into
I
there? Would
definitely would have
would a
put American Pie.
Porky's fit into there?
I mean, yes, I think those films are definitely centered around our characters having this singular focus on sex and trying to get laid. So the fact that sex is kind of the crux of that plot, and the big backdrop, definitely would have fit in this series. Like if teenage boys trying to have sex is in the synopsis for the movie,
Yeah.
then definitely would have fit in this series.
And look, it is in the synopsis of this movie as well.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly, it's in the, it's there, it's present. I was just first and foremost kind of impressed by how seriously it took itself. As much
Yeah.
as it was ridiculous at times, it's very, very eccentric. It's ridiculously 2004
Yes.
as well. It's some of the language that's used is just, whew, it takes you back to when, you could just throw these sort of terms out in movies and nobody cared. Is it good in a way? Kinda, but is it really not in a way? Kinda also.
Yeah.
I mean, as a plot, you wonder if you could even get away with making this a theatrical movie today.
No. Yeah.
Because I just don't think you could, because these are high schoolers. For all intents and purposes, these are children in this movie that are directly getting involved in the porn industry.
Yes, albeit they are 18-year-olds about to graduate high school, but still they are teenagers. Yes. Yeah.
It's mad as a premise when you actually think about it. The fact that they go to Vegas and get lap dances, go to the strip clubs, go to the adult movie, events
Expo,
and all this kind of stuff, expos, meet pornographers, and get into slightly shady business dealings with pornographers.
Yeah. Yes.
It's insane that that's a thing, and I think I almost welcome it, because it's clearly just saying it how it is, rather than acting in some sort of semi-puritanical manner about this kind of thing. Because what's the ultimate message of this movie to me, and I know we're going to get on to talking about the specifics of what happens, the ride we take to get there. The ride, see, I put another little innuendo in there. I'm going to turn absolutely disgustingly filthy during this series, and I'm not prepared to do that.
I will try to rein you in if possible.
I'm not prepared to do that. It's brought it out in me. No, it's brought. Stop it! I was going to say something else then.
No more innuendo. We need to put like an innuendo ticker on here.
Oh yeah, that'd be a good idea. Somebody do it. Somebody give us an innuendo ticker and tell us on Twitter or wherever it is. I've completely forgot what I was saying now, because I was just all about the innuendo.
Worried about your turn.
I really have. I apologize for that.
No, that's okay.
Perhaps I will make the same point later, but we're going to get into the specifics. That's right. I was talking about the general message of the movie, which is actually open discussion about the realities of sexual education. That is the ultimate message of this movie, which is great. I think that's what these movies should be made for. I think we've all been, this is a movie that I can, to a degree, identify with, not obviously in the obvious ways, but the teenage boy idea surrounding this and the thought processes, right?
Yeah.
So we've all been there. I'm there at 14 years old watching American Pie show, as everybody else is, as everybody else was talking about it when it was on late night TV. Oh, did you watch that last night? Oh, look at all this that's going on. Of course you did. You watched it. It was there. You move on. Fine. You live your life.
Yeah.
But those kind of movies can give you, for better or worse, some sort of sexual education. They can.
Yes, you learn terms and, what kids that age maybe are doing or thinking about. It kind of gives you some sort of relationship and reference for maybe things you're thinking or feeling or what your other friends are doing. So,
like, outside of your very sanitized sex ed classes that you may have, it's more naturalistic, and The Girl Next Door falls really, really well into that for me. I really did appreciate it for doing that.
Okay, I like that.
Before we get into more specific discussion, I think we have an answer to last week's question.
Yes. So every week on the Spotify release of our show, we ask a question related to the movie we're discussing. So we closed out our Black female lead series with Waiting to Exhale. So the question was, what is your favorite Black ensemble cast? And I've
Mm,
posted this question on various social medias. So on TikTok, we had Arthur A. Dill say that Set It Off with a bunch of fire emojis is his favorite Black cast. Jada, the
okay.
Queen Latifah, greatest TV mom, Kimberly Elise is an actress in that film,
Okay.
debuts, the legendary F. Gary Gray. I will never forget that last scene. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Very nice. Yes. I like it. Okay. Yes. Do you have one? I was trying to think.
Well, when
Yeah.
I do put these videos out, I answer the question myself. So
Ah, I see.
I threw out there the Best Man films, both of them great cast.
Obviously.
Yeah, a great comedic cast with drama thrown in, the kind of through line story that even is still raw for these characters all these years later in the
Mm,
sequel. The chemistry between all of them, they feel very believable as a friend group, and just a really great group of Black actors. So,
yeah. You can't
yes.
you can't fault the best man. But yes, thank you, Arthur, was it,
Yes,
for the
Arthur Teal.
response? Yeah.
Yes, on TikTok. So thank you.
Very nice. Get involved with the questions that we do pose on the shows each week. Jeannine, the girl next door. Your
Yes.
feelings towards this movie. Is this a staple of the Jeannine sex comedy watching?
I mean, yeah, this movie just hit me at a really interesting time. Had some familiar faces in it. I mean, we see Olivia Wilde just randomly in the background in this film. But
Do
also,
we? Do we? I didn't notice Olivia
yes,
Wilde. Was I
in the
not paying
kind of
attention?
yes, in some of the beginning montage scenes of all the popular kids, she's like one of the popular
Oh,
girls. So she doesn't really
okay.
have any lines. She's like kind of hanging around that really annoying group of popular boys, which one
Okay.
of them happens to be somebody that went to my high school. They were a year above me. They were a popular guy, so I didn't know them, but I knew of them. So this guy, Brandon Irons, he went to high school with me and he appears as one of the jerky popular guys in this movie. So pretty interesting to see him pop up.
Yeah, kind of weird.
Yeah.
There's that there's notable people who I went to high school with, both in my year and not in my year, but I don't
Oh,
believe I've directly ever seen somebody in a movie.
okay. Okay.
I don't believe I have. There may be one someday. I don't
Yeah.
know, but it's pretty interesting. It would be interesting to catch somebody that I recognize from a long time ago
Yeah, just pop up
in a
in a
movie.
movie. Mhm.
That's quite interesting. So yeah, I suppose it was one you must have watched to remember directly your school days, even though you
Y
weren't one of these boys obsessed with such
No.
lurid things.
Yes. So, I mean, I like that kind of opening setup. Like, you see this girl, like, you zoom in on her lips, and someone's telling her, "Ooh, yeah, pose just like that," and kind of like you don't know what's going on, and then it zooms out, and it's like school picture day, and it's the photographer telling her to
Hmm.
pose for these pictures. So, kind of just like already setting you up because already know what this movie's gonna be. So, I like that kind of switch up that they give you right in the beginning, and you see this montage of all the friend groups, the nerds, and it's like this montage of them talking about
Standard.
right? But it's like them saying like the little part in your yearbook, "I'll always remember."
Yes,
And
that's
like
right.
the nerds talking about the things they'll remember and the popular guys, what they'll remember, and all these different students. And then we get to our lead character who doesn't know what he'll remember because he had his nose in a book and was too busy studying. So he didn't really enjoy the high school experience. He didn't do anything worth remembering because he was busy
But
studying. So
now, this mentality always interests me. Like, isn't that ultimately what you're there for? Yes, okay, find a nice balance. Sure, find a nice balance. But to think that you don't have anything worth remembering when you're actually doing what you're supposed to do while you're there.
Yeah, well, that's not anything worth remembering because it's what you're supposed to do there. So why would you
So
write a
really,
whole
this
little
school.
blurb about, I got straight A's 4 years in a row? Like,
So really, we should be nitpicking the fact that this school, in its yearbook that's published by the school, seems to be celebrating people slacking off doing the schoolwork.
yes, okay, that's exactly what they're trying to do. Um, but I think it's a solid character setup just to set up who this kid
Oh, it is.
is, that, he's put so much into his studies that he doesn't really have a social life. So when this girl kind of comes into his sphere, it's
Mm.
a completely huge throw for him because it's not something he ever really put any thought into. And it's also kind of just him coming to this realization that he hasn't really done anything. He hasn't really
Well,
allowed himself to have that typical kind of high school experience. So
no.
a little bit of
Which
missing out is which maybe he never really noticed until he was faced with having to kind of write this little blurb for the yearbook. And this is the first time he's actually thought about it.
Yeah, conveniently,
Yes.
Elisha Cuthbert moves in right next door
Yes,
in
her
one of.
aunt it's her aunt's house, and her aunt is away, so she's come from LA to house sit for her aunt.
Yes, but in one of those terrifyingly, famously stupid house designs of suburban American neighborhoods, where large bedroom windows seem to
Are literally
perfectly
right
face each other.
across from each other, yeah. Like, is
So
that
you just
really a
stare
thing?
into each other's soul when you're
Yes.
asleep.
Yes, and the fact that, like, she is undressing in front of this window with the lights on, and she has the nerve to get offended when he's looking. Like, girl, you wanted him to see. Why were you undressing right in front of an open window with
Well,
all the
she didn't
lights
know he
on?
was there. She
But it's
didn't
like,
know he was there.
but why are you doing that in front of an open window when you see that there's a window across from that window? Like,
Maybe she
why would
didn't see that there's a window across from the window. She's just got there. She doesn't know this house. I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt.
wow,
I
okay.
blame the architects and the builders of the
Okay.
neighborhood.
Okay, that's fair. That is fair. But yes, like I have a big open window. I'm not gonna start just undressing in front of it, knowing that people could potentially see me. But okay. So she so he's kind of watching her. She catches him, uh, and then ultimately he sees her kind of heading to his house. And so he gets really nervous. She meets his parents and explains who she is. Her aunt lives next door. She's house sitting for her while she's away. Maybe you should show her around. So he
Mm.
ends up getting this invitation to show her around. So as he's showing her around, it seems cool. He's a little bit nervous. And then she reveals to him that she caught him looking. So, hey, it's only fair that you strip for me. So
Now, let's
this is where
just break this idea down for a second, please.
okay.
Why must we do this? Also, actually potentially illegal from public nudity is illegal anyway, but actually really quite seriously illegal from the, I imagine, slightly older um Danielle in this movie,
Yeah.
because Emile Hirsch, who is our lead, is in high school. Yes, okay, 18 as a
Yes,
character.
not considered a minor. So I'm clocking them as maybe like him 18, her 19 or 20 is where I would clock them, but they never
Sure, yes.
quite say.
It always come across as very, very suspect to me. Very suspect for somebody not in school to be involved, shall we say, with somebody in school.
But she alludes to the fact that she should be in school. Like she's like, "Oh, I thought about I quit my job and I thought about going to college. So, they don't even tell us outright, but I think they try to give you the sense that like she dropped out of school, she got into this industry very young, and now she's like trying to get out of it and actually be, have that life that she didn't get to have.
Yes,
So,
which is fair. It's commendable. It's a good character journey that she goes on in this movie, wanting to do that, being dragged back into it, yet
yeah.
really trying to push against it, really trying to free herself while kind of coming to a bit of not a fondness for the industry, but not too much of a disillusionment from it, that it exists, there's some good people involved, it just wasn't right for me. I didn't really have my head on straight when I got into it,
Yeah.
but we're not just attacking it now for the sake of attacking it. That's kind of where we end up at the movie. It's a really good, character journey she does go on.
Yeah.
I do like it, but when we have a situation of I've seen yours, or no, you've seen mine, so now I get to see yours. Why? Why is that a thing?
That is
Do
just
you believe this should be a thing?
no, but I think that is just playing into the kind of playful teen sex comedy aspect. You need to throw
Sure,
something
but
like that
the
in there
terror, the
early
fear,
on.
the
Uh,
terror, the horror, the frightness,
and it's
the
also, I
in
think
the
it's
middle of the
meant,
street.
yes, well, I think it's also meant to show her kind of opening him up, which is what, the setup
Okay,
of this character
yeah.
is about. He's very uptight. He's realizes he hasn't done anything, because that's kind of this now back and forth between the two of them. Like, what's the craziest thing you've done lately is kind of a
Yeah.
question that they end up asking each other throughout the movie. So it's kind of her showing him how to be adventurous in the start of that relationship, and why maybe he's so drawn to her is because she's getting him out of his shell and getting him to do things he's never done before.
Well, he
So
doesn't help himself having the friends he has either, one of whom is incredibly obnoxious and
Eli,
loud
yes.
and
Yes, and always
very
watching porn with his friends or on the phone with his friends, and they're very much uncomfortable, but he's just like,
this this is a criminal offense, I'd like to point out right now. Send him to I don't care how old he is, send him to prison. You can't be doing that on the phone to your friend. What's wrong with you? You've got something wrong with you. I'm sorry. I know we might be dealing with, in a few weeks' time, a rather serious adaptation, or somewhat serious adaptation of a porn addiction. But
yeah.
this man has it right here. This movie is not playing it for drama. That man belongs in prison. That child, I should say, belongs in prison.
Well, he's a child, so he's still learning. His hormones are out of whack
Yes,
at the
yes,
moment.
it's
So
fine doing it, but whilst on the phone with your best friend who actively does not want
yeah.
to be involved in
Well, at
this
least he's not,
particular
at least we
scenario,
don't see
he
him.
keeps the weirdo that Eli is, keeps him on the phone. No, don't go. I like it. What's wrong with him?
Well, at least he's not doing anything while he's on the phone or while he's sitting
He
there with his
might
friends.
as well be.
These are the things you just have to kind of brush off to the side when you're watching a teen sex comedy, because all
I'm
of these
afraid you've
films are
opened.
going to have these problematic things in there that just aren't right. I
No,
mean, think about American Pie. Do you think it was
I'm
okay
not.
for them to broadcast
No,
Nadia's naked body across the internet,
no,
even if it was just to his friends intentionally?
no.
So you have to.
Obviously. So I shout about it all the time, and I don't mean it in a serious way. I'm not saying get rid of the movie, get rid of the movie. I'm doing
Put
it for my
everybody
own
in jail.
entertainment. I'm
Put
doing it
everyone in jail.
purely for my own entertainment. I find it hilarious that you can actually have something like this in a movie that
Well, and
provokes such a reaction from watching it going, what the hell's he doing? You can't be
But
doing
it's
that
like,
sort of stuff.
imagine watching this through a 2004 lens. You probably wouldn't be fixating on these things as much, I think, which is just a weird thing to think
No,
about.
I always have.
Okay, okay.
Oh, I always have. Even that. No, I'm not. Like I said, I'm really not fixating on these things in a negative way. I'm purely doing it for entertainment purposes. I like spotting these tiny little weird things
Yes,
that are
which
going on.
these movies are rife with all the time. But for
They
me,
are.
I'm kind of looking at it from a today lens and from a 2004 lens and really thinking about how, yeah, I don't think these things would land very well today at all. But in
You can still
2004,
look. You can still make good sex comedies. We've
yeah,
seen a couple of them in the past few years. Really successful ones, really
yeah.
pretty good ones. But not in this sort of crude level anymore.
Yes, where somebody is actively watching porn while on the phone with their friends or sitting next to their friends, and the friends are visibly uncomfortable with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely
To
not, not something that would fly today. Which
Like I
actually
said
shouldn't.
before, it's kind of a shame at times because,
Yeah.
it reminds me of the In-Betweeners. Great series, great British, one of the most natural, perfect displays of British 17-year-old boys you could ever wish for
Yeah,
because it's so just completely in your
relatable.
face, true
Mhm.
true to life. There's no frills to it whatsoever. It's totally foul-mouthed, completely sex obsessed,
Yeah,
and
awkward.
wonderful, and just hit right at the right time.
Yeah.
And you couldn't actually. I don't think something like that would be allowed to be produced on television
Now,
even today, and that's only,
it's not that
well,
long
it's
ago. I
it's
mean, is it?
16 years, 2008 it
Okay,
started,
okay, okay.
but
Yeah.
it's a shame really because there's things like that that can actually kind of help people of that age watching them
And just feel real and
understand these kind of
relatable.
things like we've
Yeah.
said.
Yes. So, yeah, I mean, going into this film, I think going into this series in general, we're going to probably see a lot of things that now today would be kind of looked upon as not appropriate. But we have to also look at these films through the lens of the time that they came out.
Yeah, I think that's
So,
wise too,
yes,
definitely.
yes, but Eli, very deplorable in terms of his own kind of porn obsession.
Yeah,
So yes, once he tells Eli, Matthew, Emile
yeah.
Hirsch's character, he tells his friends Eli about this girl next door.
Eli
You
and
know,
Paul Dano, I'd like to point out, who
yes, or
will
his
just
friends.
be known as Paul Dano and not his character because it's Paul
Oh
Dano. And
my,
why is Paul Dano looking like this in this movie?
and his name is very inappropriate as well.
I
Um,
don't even remember his name. Let's have a look at his name.
you
Oh
forgot? How do
dear.
you
Yes,
forget the
yeah,
characters?
yes, it is. Yes, it is. Sorry about that one. Let's not
Yes.
mention it.
And they don't
Oh,
even mention it until I'm so happy a character at the end was like, "That's your name?" And they're like, "Yeah, but with a K." Um,
yes, but with a K.
yes. So, yes, we do see Matthew with the girl next door, Danielle, and she makes him strip and has him run down the street and kind of messes him with him a little bit, and then ultimately she picks him up, and they go to a diner and they get to know each other a little bit, and so this is kind of the beginning of them hanging out. So yes, he goes and tells his friends about this hot girl. Eli's obviously telling him, banger, banger, and that kind of thing. And then we see,
Loudly in front of
yes,
everybody.
right? We had seen a previous scene where Matthew wanted to ditch school, which is what all of the seniors were doing, have been doing. And his friends were like, "No, man, don't do it." And he's like, "Everybody else does it." And he gets in his car and he decides he's going to do it. And then he ultimately has this whole imagined image of like the security guard catching him and
Yeah.
crashing and and getting killed. And then he flashes back to him sitting in his car in the parking lot. He was not brave enough to go. So
It's
then,
kind of interesting. We get that a couple of times. We get it a few
yeah,
times in the movie. This imagined little scenario that plays out
yeah,
that you think is actually what is
yes,
actually playing out.
yes.
And it flips itself back, much like the big finale battle
Yeah.
of Twilight. Just thought I'd
I
throw that
mean,
out there.
yeah, a little bit. But I like that they use it in certain scenarios so that when it does come back in kind of this major point at the end of the film, you know, we've
Yeah.
kind of maybe almost forgotten that we've seen that already.
Yeah.
And so then, you know, when it happens here, we are believing that, oh my gosh, everything's falling apart. But we will
Can we
get
talk
there.
about Timothy Olyphant, please? He's my favorite part of
We
this
will,
movie. He's
yes,
so
we're
unhinged.
chugging along, we're getting there. So yes, Danielle, you know, has opened him up. He ditches school with her, has spent some days with her, getting to know her, and they're really enjoying their time together. He's kind of becoming a little rebellious. And then they go to a party. Oh, a high school party. And so he's feeling like cool. It's him and his friends. And they walk into this party with hot Danielle. And then the cool guys kind of take Danielle away and try to kick him and his friends out of the party. But then,
That's
you know,
shady
now,
behavior.
right? And so, but now that he's been emboldened, he just goes up to Danielle and makes out with her in front of everybody. So now that kind of solidifies their relationship. Danielle seems into it. So this is like his girl now. So now that they've
Yeah.
established their relationship, things are going good. He's feeling like he's opening up, he's doing well. And then Eli comes to him and says, "Hey, I need to show you something." You know, and then we see kind of Eli as the king of the audio-visual club. Like, you know, he has his minions and
Yeah.
he's kind of in charge. He kicks them all out, puts in a tape, and it is an adult film starring Danielle. So then this is where Matthew realizes that his girl is an adult film actress.
Yes,
So then,
Eli would definitely be the person who lived in the back room behind the curtain in the video rental store.
probably he would have a cot back there. So because then he is the one saying, "Hey, you know, she's a porn star, so you know, you need to just take her to a motel and you know, do what you want to do with her because that's who she is." And
Because
so
that's what he would do, of course. Let's just
yes.
call him out
He
again,
literally
please.
shouts at him in front of the whole school, you know, "Fuck her for me, like, fuck her for me.
Yes, but
Don't
you know,
waste
he
this
wouldn't be
opportunity."
for
Kind
me.
of.
Why don't you go and do something, Eli? You waste of space. I don't like
Yes.
you.
So he lets Eli get into his head and he forgets about this really sweet girl that he's getting to know and is really kind of focused on, oh, she's this person now, you
Yeah.
know, and lets kind of Eli's influence get in his head. So he's trying to play cool and aloof and is being really weird with her and then takes her to a motel. He's like, "Oh, there's a motel over there. We should get a room for fun." And so she's kind of just going along with it. And then she, you know, gets on the bed and starts taking off her clothes and is like, "Is this what you want?" Because she realizes that he has figured out who she is. So she's playing with him. He gets shy and is like, "Why are you doing this?" And she's like, "Isn't that why you brought me here? So, you know, you could do a porn star." And so I like that she kind of turns the tables on him. And,
Yeah,
you know, the
because we
fact that
must
he gets
remember,
uncomfortable, you realize he's not ready for this.
of course he isn't, but we also must remember, idiots, that people think adult performers, as I'll pleasantly call them, are not prostitutes, Jeannine.
Yes,
There is a significant difference,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
these people do not realize this in this
Yes, and
movie.
he's
And I
had
get the
several.
feeling, I get the feeling that in the real world, some people also do not realize this and think if they were to meet, if they were to go to one of the adult film expos that we see in this movie in Vegas, for example, that they would just proposition somebody.
Yeah,
No.
that's not how that works. And also just very disappointing at the fact that he spent all these days getting to know her as her. And that all
Yeah.
kind of goes out the window once he realizes what she does.
Idiot.
Uh, so obviously things don't go good. She gets upset, storms off. And the next day he goes to the house to apologize to her. And this is where we meet Timothy Olyphant, who
Yay!
is a big-time porn, or trying to be a big-time porn producer, who has worked with her, who also dated her, and wants her to come back to LA to do her job. Which you could tell that she was trying to kind of escape from all of that, so he's trying to kind of reel her back in.
He's so dodgy in this
Yeah.
movie.
He's
I love
so
it so much.
skeezy. He's great.
Why he's again, we're dealing with a really shady kind of age gap in lustfulness here. Like
Yeah.
he clearly, like we say, he has dated her. She's no older than 20. He
Yes.
is definitely in his 30s. You know, it's really one of those kind of situations. He looks like he's completely off his face all the time. His hair's insane.
Oh,
His
yeah, he looks
mannerisms are
crazy.
insane.
Yeah.
He belongs in that ridiculous scene from Boogie Nights, which also would have been a wonderful movie to do for this series if I hadn't obviously seen
Yeah, I
it.
was like
But he belongs in that insane Alfred Molina scene in Boogie Nights in this
Yes,
movie.
definitely looks like that. So they're headed to a strip club, and Matthew wants to come along because he's trying to make things up to Danielle and apologize to her. So they're like, we're going to the strip club, and he's like, okay, I'll go with you. And she's like, no, he has school, and she's trying to like keep him out of this situation, but he insists, and so he goes along. And so they end up going to the strip club, and he's trying to like look cool in front of her. So Timothy Olyphant is smoking a cigar. He's like, I want a cigar too. They're ordering drinks. He tries to order a Long Island iced tea. And he ultimately kind of tries to bond, or Timothy Olyphant is very schmoozy. So when Danielle steps away, he's like trying to talk to him and be a friend to him. He's like, I liked everything that you said to her, you seem like a cool kid. And he's like trying to be really friendly with him at first. And a very funny,
in a
I don't know.
patronizing way.
Yes. And I don't know if this was an ad lib. I forgot that this was in this movie. I don't see how this could have been a scripted line. But while they're at the strip club, Matthew ends up seeing his neighbor, who always comes over to his house, who's friends with his dad, comes over to his house with his wife, and he sees this man at the strip club, and he's like, oh my gosh, that's my neighbor, Mr. Peterson. He comes to my house for dinner all the time with his wife. And so Timothy Olyphant, he's like, hey, Peterson. Like, Matthew's just like trying to hide, like, oh my gosh, don't call him over here. Like, I'm sure Mr. Peterson doesn't want to be seen there. Matthew doesn't want to be seen there, but this is who Timothy Olyphant is. And the fact that he says, Peterson, I haven't seen your black ass in ages. And Mr. Peterson isn't even black. I forgot that was in the movie.
Oh,
made me laugh so hard.
Honestly, the level of pure enjoyability Timothy Oliphant brings to this
how
movie.
He delivers it. He's just like saying stuff like, Peterson, get your ass over here, Peterson. I haven't seen your black ass in ages. Oh my God. He's saying this to this white man, and Mr. Peterson's just confused. And then this really awkward scene, he's like, Timothy Olyphant, let's just get you guys a couple of lap dances. So we have Mr. Peterson and Matthew next to each other while these girls are just doing these lap dances on them. And Mr. Peterson's trying to ask Matthew about his scholarship. He's like, oh yeah, so when's the big speech for your scholarship? While this girl's boobs are just in his face. It's like, oh yeah, it's coming up. What was the prompt for your essay again? And it's the moral fiber is like the core of this essay they used to give, while the two of them are just getting humped on by these lap dancers. So a very comical scene, all driven by Timothy Olyphant as this kind of douchey producer character that comes in. So the movie takes this really interesting turn at this point now to something completely different than what it started out to be. Because you're seeing this teen romance, and she's opening him up. And
Yeah.
then, he takes advantage of her being this porn star. And then this whole kind of interesting shift happens once we bring in this adult industry element.
Yeah, it's as we've said, it's a really great added layer that the movie
Yeah.
does have, because Danielle ends up going back and getting slightly involved in that industry again, going with Oliphant and going,
Yeah.
back, and the relationship between her and Matthew looks to be breaking down a little bit,
Yeah.
to the point where he obviously has to gather his buddies and go after her. And it's when we get the most, the most kind of spectacle sequence in the whole movie,
Yeah.
when they're in Vegas and it's all flashy and it's all glitz and glamour, I suppose, but there is many, many, many nakedness everywhere.
Yeah.
That's a terrible phrase that I've just used, but
Many,
it's accurate.
nakedness. It works.
It's accurate.
We also meet the character Hugo Posh, played by James
Mm,
Remar, who is this big
yeah,
time porn producer to Timothy Olyphant's kind of small time porn producer. So they're kind of rivals. And
yeah.
I think they were partners at one point, and Hugo took his idea. And so there's this rivalry between the two of them. And Hugo
Like,
has
how
also
many
been
ideas can there possibly be?
right.
This is my question, right?
It's
The
very
how
surface. It's literally just satirizing popular things. If we
it
look at
is.
this award, this very phallic looking award that Hugo has in his home, it's for
Yes,
a
it's
movie
a
called
penis award. It is a
Chitty.
penis
It's
award.
called Chitty Chitty Gang Bang. So that's what the award is for. So very much
Oh dear.
films just spoofing and satirizing popular things. So yes, whatever great idea Timothy Olyphant had, I guess Hugo stole it. And so there's this rivalry between him, but Hugo has since become like this bigger time producer. And he also has had an interest in working with Danielle. So that kind of comes into play later.
I actually can't understand how these sort of things work. Like these X-rated spoof versions of movies. I don't. Who is watching these things? Like, if you're going to actually take the time to have a little bit of self-love, as we'll call it, right? If you're going to
Yeah.
do that,
Why
are
do you
you
want
going
like
to the extent of watching Chitty Chitty Gangbang? So I'm going to sit here singing the songs with Dick Van Dyke. There's another one for you. There's another little innuendo.
yes.
That I'm absolutely certain the lead
Probably
character
had some.
in Chitty Chitty Gangbang is probably called Dick in capital letters Van Dyke. It just makes sense that it would be called that. But why would you go to the extent of watching a plotted movie that happens to have
familiar
porn in it?
characters in it and then porn? Yes. So
It's weird to me.
right, how that became a thing. But yeah, so we set up kind of this rivalry, which comes into play a little bit later. We
Whatever
also
you're
didn't
into.
mention that one of the many extracurricular activities that Matthew had been involved in order to kind of get scholarships and look good on applications, was he was sponsoring this young, I think Cambodian teenager
Right,
named
yes.
Sam Young, and he
Naturally
raised
you get quite a lot of slightly offensive, let's call it slightly offensive, and not horrifically offensive humor.
No, but I love that, like, every time somebody says the name wrong, because they call this kid Samsung, and like all of the jocks are like, yeah, I love that little kid, I just want to screw the hell out of him, kind of thing, like the drunken guys at the party. Yes,
that's a point as well. Let's nitpick that scene for a little bit, shall we?
When they're at the party, when they go to that high school party, he runs into some drunk guy. He's like, oh yeah, you're the kid who's trying to bring Samsung here. And he's like, oh, his name's Sam Young. And he's like, oh, I love that little fucker. I'm gonna bang the shit out of him when he gets here. Like,
What goes through somebody's mind?
Yes, but also, though, he's drunk enough to say some dumb shit like that, but he actually says the name correct the second time after Matthew corrected him. So he does say, yeah, I love that Sang Nong. So
Well, yeah,
like
credit there then.
yes. And
The
Matthew
offensive
corrects
humor,
people. And Matthew
yes.
corrects some every time they say the name wrong, Matthew will correct them. So I'm like, okay,
the offensive humor directed towards Samyang is by characters themselves and not the movie, which is a very important distinction.
Yes.
This is not 16 Candles we're dealing with.
No, definitely not. So he's raised, I think, like $25,000 to bring this kid to the States to study because he's like a genius. So he actually, when he goes to he ends up kind of going off on this excursion with Timothy Olyphant as they kind of bonded after the strip club situation. So he thinks, they're talking, they're friends, that Timothy Olyphant's really understanding with this new relationship that he's trying to make with Danielle. He takes him to the bank with him to check on the account and to put more money into it for Samyang, and meets the bank teller who's been in charge of that account. And Timothy Olyphant's kind of flirting with her, and she's kind of wondering, who is this adult with you? And so Matthew says, oh, this is my, academic advisor. So that comes into play a little bit.
Incredibly shady man wearing some sort of bathrobe.
He's like, yes, and he's like, he's flirting with her, he's cussing. So for her to kind of like believe this, okay, whatever, lady. So then I think after this is when we have the expo, and then Matthew makes this big stance to get Danielle out of there, which is just ruining Timothy Olyphant's plan, because he's trying to make a movie with her, he's trying to promote her, but Matthew's trying to take her out of that life. So once Matthew kind of gets her to go with him, that ruins all of Timothy Olyphant's plans. So now he's on a mission to ruin everything for Matthew. So he ends up going to the bank and clearing out the account. So when Matthew goes there again, he's like, oh, hey, I'm here to get the money for Samyang. And the lady's like, oh, your academic advisor came and took the money. And she's like, wait, you didn't check his ID or anything? No, you said he was your academic advisor, so I gave him. And so it turns into this whole thing. So now all the money's gone. So he's worried about going to jail and all of this.
The world's least secure bank.
Right? And he even's like, yes, like this lady, I like that he calls her out, like, lady, you didn't check for ID, you didn't do anything. And then ultimately, Timothy Olyphant also messes with him and says, hey, you're screwing with my business. He like beats him up a little bit, and he forces him to steal that chitty gangbang award from Hugo Posh's house. And so after he kind of like messes with him and beats him up for taking Danielle away, he's like, oh, I'm sorry, man. Like, I don't want you to bruise up. Here, take some aspirin. So he gives him a pill. Then proceeds to have him go into Hugo Posh's house, steal this award. He steals it, gets attacked by Hugo Posh's parrot, and then Timothy Olyphant drives away, leaving him there, only for this to be the night of his big dinner speech that he has to give, and for that pill that he gave him not to be aspirin, but to be ecstasy. So he's high on ecstasy, he's all beaten up, and now he has to give this speech for his scholarship.
It does not go very well.
No, so he actually so he's very sloppy. He's like trying to kiss on everybody and touch everything, and he still has like a bloody nose and looks terrible. But Daniel's like trying to clean him up. His buddies are like trying to help him out as well. So I like that, like the little team's coming together to like help him because they know this is important for him. But then he ends up throwing out his speech and actually kind of giving a more kind of liberating speech that everyone ends up kind of being into. But he ultimately...
They do. I don't understand how, really, because he is definitely kind coming across like...
mess. Like he is on drugs.
A sloppy mess. Yeah. He looks like a small Timothy Olyphant in this.
Yes, crazy hair, all bloodied up, not looking great. But he ends up giving this really liberating speech, which just speaks to kind of the influence that Danielle has had on him. And then ultimately, he does not get the scholarship. So then, you know, finds out the money's missing, so things are not going well. So this is when he crafts this plan with his friends and with Danielle. And so, you know, because Timothy Olyphant had mentioned, you know, when he first met him, that, you know, he had this great idea to do a porn based on prom, like a high school prom. So then when it
surely to goodness has been done,
it must have
times.
Yes, but in this universe, this is a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
So it comes time for their prom. So we see them kind of crafting this plan. So we think, okay, and we see them meet with Hugo Posh. So we're like, you know, so Matthew's telling him, if I pull this off, you know, I'll get the 25,000. He's like, yes, if you get this, you know, I'll take care of your little friend Samsung. And he corrects him. Yes. And he's like, yeah, whatever, kind of thing. So you think, okay, we've already heard that, you know, this big money-making idea is to do a porn set at a prom. They're coming up to the prom. They're talking to Hugo Posh. The AV club is running around listening to Eli's orders to film all this whole thing. Danielle has called her 2 porn star friends to come out to be prom dates for Paul Dano and Eli. And they're filming this whole thing. So we're like, oh my gosh, they're actually going to do it. They're going to do a porn during the prom. So we kind of see them running around.
Are now fairly convinced that the climax of the movie, there's another one for you. That's not even one. Good. That's not even one. That's just a word.
It just happens to work in this scenario.
That's just a word. That we now all think that the climax of this movie is children putting on a porno while their prom's going on.
Yes. So we see the girls.
Which is like, how is that in a movie?
Right? So, I mean, 2004. So
2004. That's how it's in a movie.
That's the answer for everything. 2004. So they even hire the popular jocks to be the actors in the film, have them sign photo releases. One of the popular jocks who tried to kick him out of the party is now like, you know, he wants to be in on what they're doing, but I love that Matthew kind of has this redemptive moment, like, sorry, not enough room, because that's what the guy told him when he came to his party.
Does your high school classmate get involved?
He does. He does sign up to be a part of it. And so we just kind of see Matthew and Danielle enjoying the prom as Eli and the girls and the AV club are kind of running all over the school trying to get different shots for things. So we're thinking, okay, what is happening here? So then it's the final set piece. They're in the library, and they need a guy for the big final scene. So we need a guy to kind of show everything. So
let's just take a minute as well. The big final scene being plainly obvious. Why do people take it so seriously?
Yes,
just doing what you just acknowledge it. I am of the belief that it makes way more sense, for example, to be an OnlyFans creator than it does to be involved in the professional porn industry, because one makes sense in my mind, and one just doesn't make any sense in my mind.
Yes, yeah.
Why does anybody need a plot and staging
to make that happen? I don't know. I don't know why you'd be focusing on any of stuff, but maybe people need that. Maybe people need a good playful scenario. I don't know. I'm not going to yuck in anybody's yum.
2004. But no, I suppose, like we say, it's, you know, you're into what you're into. Sure,
yes. So they need a guy, and so one of the popular guys, he set up to be the guy to show it all, but he gets nervous and can't do it.
Idiot. Sorry.
Yes. So then Matthew, he says he'll do it, even though he's really nervous about it. But But then Paul Dano decides, no, I'm going to do it. They kind of had mentioned earlier that they're the three legs of the tripod. They're gonna, they work together. They're friends, they're teammates. This was, Matthew's idea. Eli's filming it. So Paul Dano wants to do something. So he decides to be the final guy in the reveal it all shot.
Can I just put another little ding on the ticker? 3 legs of the tripod.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Think about it. Did you
that
say
was
that on purpose?
I mean, it was meant to probably be exactly what it was. Which also there's a really cute moment because Paul Dano is very much insecure and thinks, he's not a good looking guy and all of this thing.
It's because he isn't in this movie. He looks like some sort of troll creature.
Why did you have to be so harsh with that opinion? Well, a very beautiful porn star who is in the scene with him, she's like, I know this is unprofessional, but I just want to tell you, I think you're really cute. And he's like, yeah, right. She's like, no, I think you're really cute. So she thinks he's really cute when you have to shout on the hilltop, from the hilltops, he's ugly. He's an ugly troll in this movie.
I'm not saying generally he is. I'm just he's made up in this movie to look like a complete
weird haircut and the glasses, and he has since figured out how to improve, with the hair and everything else. But yes, so he steps up to be kind of the final guy in the shot, and so then at the end we see they're about to do the big final shot, and then somebody comes in and we see it's a teacher who was kind of watching them throughout the whole prom and kind of suspicious, and he starts yelling at everybody and he's talking about getting everyone in trouble, and then we realize it's kind of one of those worst case scenario fantasies that Matthew has had previously. So I like that we get this kind of fake out because we're like, oh my gosh, they're caught, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? But that ends up being like a worst case scenario fantasy. So they end up getting away with it. End of prom, all successful, celebrating with champagne in the limo. Perfect night.
Yes. Seemingly perfect night.
Yes.
I just, for some reason, this crossed my mind as well while watching the movie. I was in a mood when I was watching this movie to question tiny little things about
obviously.
I enjoy it when I get in this kind of mood. The teacher man who comes in this imaginary scenario, I mean, for some reason, inexplicably, it was reminding me of Rodney Dangerfield, which I don't think makes much sense because he doesn't really look at all or act at all like Rodney Dangerfield.
Where is that even?
However, it made me think of if it was Rodney Dangerfield, he would have just gotten straight involved in what was going on.
I mean, he would have seen, I was like, hey, you got a pop for me, like kind of thing, yes. But not this teacher.
We're all gonna get laid. Yes, we are, Rodney.
No respect. But so random. I'm glad.
I can't explain it. I'm sorry.
So yes, they're all very happy, seemingly successful. They drop off the friends and they go with the porn stars. So they have a very good night. And then it's just Danielle and Matthew in the limo, and they have their nice romantic making love in the limo for the first time situation.
Yes.
So Matthew,
you've got to make sure there's enough space. And I know it's a limo, but the height situation.
Well, they seem like they're both pretty small people, pretty short people.
Well, that's true, actually. Emile Hirsch is quite small, isn't he?
Yes. So nice romantic moment. And it's not gratuitous at all.
No, not at all.
Yes.
Surprisingly so. Again, it's not gratuitous. It's very PG, I suppose.
Yes, very PG-13 played for kind of the romance between the characters more than anything else. So Matthew is walking back to his house from Danielle's house the next morning, feeling really good, jacket slung over his shoulder, and then he gets a call from Eli, frantic. They can't find the tape. They can't find the tape of everything they recorded. It's missing. What are they going to do? And he walks into his house and he sees his principal, who's already been suspicious of him because Danielle and him jumped into the teacher's pool and was swimming in his pool, and the teacher kind of like spotted
Oh,
them
that's
in the
right.
middle of the night.
Yes.
So the principal's at his house, his parents, and he's like, "Oh, we have somebody here who wants to speak with you," and it's Timothy Olyphant, and he's got the tape. So
Mm.
now we have him, he's like, "Oh," he's like, he has something he wants to tell us, and so he's like, "Can I just speak to Matthew alone?" So it's Timothy Olyphant and Matthew alone. And he tells him, "I have your tape. If you don't, give me half of whatever you got from Hugo for this tape, you're going to give me your half. You're going to give me Danielle, or I'm going to show your parents and the principal this tape."
Yeah.
And so Matthew calls his bluff and he's like, "Go ahead, show them." He's like, "I'm not messing around. I will show them." He's like, "Go ahead." So he pops in the tape. We're kind of like, what's going to happen? Wait, what? He's fine with them seeing this tape.
You
And
can't be showing your own parents that sort of thing.
right? Yes. And so the tape starts, and it's the two like porn star girls, and they're dressed like, school girls, and they're in a
Mm.
classroom, and they start talking about the first time they had sex. And then it leads into this actually not being a porn set, prom set porno. It turns out that it's a sex ed video. So like for the
Yes.
modern teen, because even I think throughout the movie we saw a very outdated, like from the 50s
Oh
sex ed
God,
tape.
yeah.
So very much just setting us up to like, this is the sex education that teens in the 2000s are getting.
Yeah.
So this is
Well, this
one
is what I've
for,
been saying. This is
yeah,
what I've been saying the entire episode
yeah,
long. Movies
yeah.
like this can be just as useful in sexual education as the movie that this movie creates.
Yes, exactly. So his mom was like, "Oh, this is really interesting." And then his dad is like, "Yeah, like if we, he kind of nudges the principal, like, imagine if we had this type of sex education tape when we were growing up instead of that old, like stuffy one. I think we would have paid more attention." So the principal's like, "I don't like it, but these kids, you got to do something to get them to pay attention." So, and then here's Timothy Olyphant like looking like, "What the hell is this?" So he, his whole plan backfires, but he's also kind of
Mm.
impressed.
He is
So
another brilliant idea somebody else had, Timothy,
yes.
that you didn't have because your idea wasn't all that.
No, wasn't all
Wasn't
that
all that.
innovative. So yeah, we see that this now with Hugo Posh has become this huge popular sex ed tape. Kids from college are trying to get copies of it to watch. They have a copy, and Paul Dano, I almost said his character's name. Uh,
No, no,
uh
we can't be we
all of
can't
these
be saying that.
no, all of these characters are sat around watching it, and we see him, but he's wearing like a fencing mask, so his face is hidden.
Yeah.
And everyone has kind of heard about this elusive guy, because the end, the whole scene that they were doing with the guy was they were actually going to show you how to put a condom on a real person as opposed to a banana or
Yeah.
something. So that's why they needed a real guy. So as like all of these college students have this smuggled version of this tape watching it, they're like so impressed by how big this guy is. And then we see
Mm.
Paul Dano give a little smile because it's like, it's
In the
him
background, just sat hunched in
between two
people, just
girls. Yeah.
smiling to himself. But
Yes.
also, can I also just point out
Okay.
just the volume in which some of the characters in this movie express their emotions about sexual things. Like, why in a large group of people who are watching this sex ed tape would you go, "Oh my God, that guy's huge," with a massive smile on your face?
Right? Like,
Why
I mean,
would you do
unless
that?
right? Is that like, I don't know, is that a thing for other guys to be impressed with other guys' things when they are not into that themselves?
Yes, but I suppose so. But you don't. Well,
Exclaim
maybe
that
for
to
some
that degree?
maybe for some people, and then not for other people. But you certainly don't go around
Explain to that
shouting the
degree?
odds about it.
Well, this guy is on your mountaintop where you're shouting how ugly Paul Dano is. He's next to you on
In
another
this movie,
mountaintop
I'd like
shouting
to
about
specify,
how big he is.
I mean, go ahead, Paul Dano. Be whatever you want.
But as we get this montage of like what this sex ed video has provided Matthew, it's him now doing his I will always remember. And he's
That's
going
right.
through all of the things he'll remember based on the things that kind of the successful things that came out of him making this tape. So, you know, he didn't get a scholarship, but the success of that tape as him being this silent partner, he made plenty of money to pay for college because he got into Georgetown. He got himself a fancy new car, and we see Hugo on a talk show and they're like, you know, who's your partner? And he's like, oh, he wants to remain anonymous, kind of thing.
Because he's a child.
Yes, he
technically no longer a child. Sorry,
right.
He's actually at college.
He's
now,
teenager,
okay.
all into college. He talks about, I'll always remember my academic advisor, and he sends Timothy Olyphant a big box of cigars. I
don't know why Olyphant deserves any gifts, by the way.
Right? Yes, I mean, he was nice at first, but then he would totally try to ruin his life. He'll remember the 3 legs of the tripod, and it shows him graduating with his 2 friends. And he'll always remember the girl next door, of course. Gotta throw that in there. And then we see him,
drop song.
coming out of school, and it's him and Danielle, and it's nice little happy ending.
Georgetown's a very nice university as well. I've been round there. Obviously, I've not just for a walk around when I was on holiday at one point. It's a very nice place architecturally.
Oh, did that look like the actual place, or was that just like a made up place? They just saying Georgetown.
No, it did look like the actual place. As far as I could tell, it probably was.
Okay.
Perhaps with the kind of grey stone buildings in the background.
Yeah.
But yeah, I should point out as well, I just made a joke about a needle drop song. There's an awful lot of needle drop songs in this movie.
Yeah,
and it's like so on the nose, kind of obvious soundtrack as well.
Yes.
With a little twinge of 2004 typical kind of poppy rocky stuff.
Yes.
But also going back, you get the Who Teenage Wasteland, called, but Baba O'Reilly, you get that obviously
under pressure.
It's so blatantly obviously needle drop soundtrack, but it's fine because it's this movie.
Yes, and it's a movie that's and a movie that's meant to be this more elevated version of the genre that's kind of trying to have a little bit more substance and take itself a little slightly more seriously than something like an American Pie.
Yeah, sure.
So yes,
American Pie's soundtrack's good,
Yeah, it's really good.
They have good songs in there. But yes. Great way to start.
The Girl Next Door. What did you think overall, Morgan?
I did. I enjoyed the movie. I like it when I have these sort of reactions to movies because it makes me appreciate a certain level of silliness in movies like this. And I very much do it for my own and everybody else and yours and everybody else's entertainment.
Yes,
because
I
just find
that.
it funny.
I appreciate your fake offense to things in these movies.
I do. I did enjoy the movie. I do genuinely think it was a great way to start us off. It's not too intense. We didn't get right into the nasty stuff right at the start. It would have put us off, Jeannine. We don't want a provocative journey like that, do we? We want to be eased in, like I said. And then next week get to the really uncomfortable stuff.
Yeah, things will get a little more serious. So we're going to be talking Shame with Michael Fassbender, directed by Steve McQueen. Basically, this man
Yeah.
who has a sex addiction. He's done a very good job of hiding it from people who know him in his life. But when his kind of bohemian, like all over the place younger sister comes to kind of stay with him and infiltrate his life, he's struggling with maintaining it, his addiction, because he can't be free to enact on it
Yeah.
because she's in his personal space. So that kind of causes him to break down a little bit. And also they've had kind of a strained relationship as well. So that kind of brings in some drama also. So
It's going to be interesting. I
yeah.
miss Michael Fassbender. I
Yes.
do. I really do. Credit to him. He's living his life. He's happy,
Yeah.
as far as I can tell, as far as I know. But you just don't see him in things anymore because he doesn't
No.
do
No,
things
last
and
I
hasn't
saw
for a
he
good
did
few
that
years.
Taika Waititi football movie, which people said
Oh, that's
wasn't
right. He did
great,
do that. He
and
did
that's
do
kind of the
that.
last thing he's
Doesn't do a lot though. Doesn't do a lot
No,
anymore.
maybe he's doing a lot of stage type stuff, I don't know. Enjoying his happy
Possibly.
life with Elisha Cuthbert. So
Maybe we're being ignorant and he's actually working harder than he's ever worked
well,
before. I'm
I
sorry,
think him and
Michael.
Elisha Vikander had a baby, so maybe he just was like, "I have kids now, I'm just gonna focus on that." So
Credit to him. I've always liked him. I've
he's
always
very
liked him.
talented and easy on the eyes. So
Oh, he's a very good-looking gentleman.
yes, yeah.
Undeniably so. But yes, that is coming next week. This has been the start of Provocative Pictures this week
Yes.
with The Girl Next Door. Applause for
Yay.
everything going on. It is not the only show we have on the It's a Wonderful podcast feed. Of course, Monday Madness starts the week off right on a Monday, and the main show every Friday celebrating old movies. Of course, we are beginning a series on Couples on the Run on Friday.
Yes.
It's going to be very, very enjoyable indeed. I am most excited for Couples on the Run. We're back home in old Hollywood, dark noir and nasty crime movies, and it just works. We enjoy it. It's where we feel most comfortable. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have you covered on the It's a Wonderful podcast feed. Subscribe wherever you do get your podcasts on all major podcast platforms. Answer those questions that we put on Spotify or Jeannine puts everywhere else, because we will read your
on our
answers out.
YouTube, on TikTok. Yeah, check it out.
Yeah, we definitely will. We like doing that. We like the interaction. It makes us smile. And what else can I say? Subscribe, ding the notification bell on the It's a Wonderful Podcast YouTube channel. Of course, if you want to support us on Patreon or donate in any way, there are links in the description to do that. We would love you forever. Or, of course, just find us on social media on the app formerly known as Twitter at It's a Wonderful One. Find me at the Purple Dawn with the 3 instead of the E in the because, Jeannine.
3 is a magic number.
On Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at the Purple Dawn. All your provocativeness is where
you can find me at Jeannine _ on Twitter, Jeannine on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. If you want to get any merch for any of our shows, just check the description for the link or search It's a Wonderful Podcast on teespring.com. And if you want to purchase any of my art in print form, you can find that at my Big Cartel shop, g9design.bigcartel.com.
You see, that was my way of kind of selling us and to people. It might make
selling
you feel
us
a little selling us. Yeah, it might make you feel a little bit, like some sort of specific type of person. But we're not going down that route.
No,
we're not going down that route. However, there's plenty of provocative things going on your social media anyway. Sometimes it's just your bizarre opinions.
Yes.
Most of the time, really.
Mostly,
not much else. Anyway, and stop talking about other people's social media. There's only one thing left to do, Jeannine. I don't really think there's much of wonderful impressions to be had from the girl next door unfortunately. So how convenient I inexplicably brought up Rodney Dangerfield.
No, God, no. Oh my God, why? This is so random and unrelated to anything in this movie. Okay. 3, 2, 1, no respect.
Bye.